Welcome guys to our first watercolor session, which is basically describing the nature and the characteristics of the watercolor medium. Watercolor paint is a translucent, or we can say the transparent medium. Watercolor is basically a colored pigment in a water-soluble binder. So if you see the property of the watercolor or the content of the watercolor, it will be having two things. One is the colored pigment, and second is the binder, which will help to join the pigments together. And the pigments can be the organic or inorganic. These are basically the finely ground compounds which will give the color to the paints. And the binding mediums also can be of two types. It can be a natural gum or can be a synthetic compound. Now let's have a look for the basic four characteristics of the watercolor medium. The first and the foremost property of the watercolor medium is the transparency. So as we know, the watercolor is a transparent medium. So the colors can also have the property of the transparent or semi-transparent or the opaque. So that all depends on the pigments they have inside. So depending on the pigments, we can categorize the watercolors into these three categories: the transparent, semi-transparent or opaque. Here we can do a small test just to check the transparency level of the watercolors. So for that, you can just make a black line with the permanent marker, and on top of that just keep applying different colors. So as you are seeing in the picture, the first one, the yellow one, you can see a little bit of yellow color on the black marking line. So that shows that color is not completely transparent. We can say it's a semi-transparent and not opaque also, because if it is opaque, it would have covered the black line completely. So that yellow comes in the category of the semi-transparent. And next to that, if you see the brownish color, here we can see the black line clearly visible. That shows the complete transparency property of that color. Let's move to the second characteristics of the watercolor paints. That is the staining versus non-staining. It means, like, if you are putting any color on the paper and if you want to take it off or if you want to rub it off, you can see some stains on the paper. So sometimes you will see the stains, or sometimes it will be the completely white. So that depends on the characteristics of the paint which you are using, plus the quality of the paper. So as it's visible in the picture, the first picture is showing the purple color, and after applying the color, I am just wiping out a little bit of color from the paper. Still I can see the traces of the purple shade in the area where I have taken out the color. And if you look at the second picture with the yellow color, the area which I wiped it out, it's looking completely white. So there is no stain on the paper. So these two things depends totally on the quality of the pigments, quality of the watercolors, as well as the quality of the watercolor paper. So another watercolor quality is known as the granulating versus non-granulating. The difference between these two is the reaction which happens when we apply the color on the paper. So basically there is a combination of the paper and the pigment both. The non-granulating pigments are the pigments which shows a very smooth and soft finish on the paper. Like if you see in the picture, the right one, the yellow color, is giving you a kind of smooth finish. There is no patches on it. So that is known as a non-granulated pigment. And on the other side, if you see the blue one, you will see a little patchy effect, because somewhere you will find the blue pigment more dominating, and at some places it will be little diluted. So that depends on your requirement. If you want the little patchy and white shaded work, it's always nice to use the granulated one. And if not, then you can go for the non-granulated pigments. Now let's see the last property of the watercolor, that is the fugitive versus non-fugitive. A fugitive color is a pigment that when we exposed to certain environmental conditions, for example the humidity or temperature, sunlight, or maybe the pollution, is comparatively the less permanent. Like over a period of time, it will change its color. It can be either lightened up or a bit of darken up or shaded, or maybe it just disappear. So basically these are the temporary watercolors and not recommended for the professional use. As against to this fugitive, we have the non-fugitive quality of watercolor that will stay permanent irrespective of the different environmental conditions. So it doesn't matter for how long you want to preserve them, the quality and the freshness will remain the same. So this is all about the basic 4 characteristics of the watercolor medium, that is the transparency versus opacity, the staining versus non-staining, granulating versus non-granulating, and fugitive versus non-fugitive. So now let's move to another session which will give you the briefing about the all materials which we will be needing further for learning our various watercolor techniques as well as the projects. Thank you.